A lot of what we value is because the world values it. That's why I love the spirit of Christianity. And the spirit of Christianity doesn't necessarily have to be something that you take to heart in a dogmatic way. Dogma being a system of beliefs that you adhere to unconditionally. You don't need to adhere to the spirit of Christianity to that extent, or adhere to the spirit of any kind of religious systematic belief. But my point is, religion is on to something, spirituality is on to something. I think a lot of the emptiness and the dysfunction, the lack of community and the toxicity we experience is because we're not going deeper. When we, I'm just, everybody says that they want better connections, they want true friendships, they want this, they want that, but they're not brave enough and courageous enough to put their heart on the table, say, I'm a scared fool. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what love is. What does love mean to you? Let's have a discussion about it. What the So many people don't even know what love means to them because they let the world tell them what love means to them. So many people don't know what a life is because they let the world tell them what a life is. Whether you have a job or don't have a job, whether you're making money or not making money, whether you have an education or don't have an education, you still are engaged in this thing called life. Whether you're successful or not, existence is life. Existing silent in a room with your thoughts and feelings non-judgmentally. That's life. The present moment is life. And of course it is. Of course it is. Is there a framework? Is there a design created by human beings to where we then have these metrics and have a kind of competitive circumstance, and then for one to experience a certain kind of luxury, you need to do X, Y, and Z, and if one fails to, then you will experience the side effects of that. Yes. That's all, but I'll put that in the category of what I would call man's game. There's man's game, and then there's existence itself. And I guess my biggest beef with any kind of conversation and any kind of sort of perspective is that people assume and feel as though the establishments and the institutions that man has set up is therefore existence itself. And it's not about not indulging man's institutions. It's not about not succeeding and being victorious within them, but it is about some people, or I would say the vast majority of people, put all of their chips into it, and it defines them. Man's game defines them. Their career defines them. Their race defines them. Their gender defines them. The amount of money they have defines them. Where they live defines them. What should we be defined by? I believe that we should be defined by our efforts. And then where are your efforts being applied? I believe your efforts should be applied to, first and foremost, sleep, nourishment, physical activity, healthy conversations. Why? Because how can you even begin to comprehend anything with a clarity if your system is not stable, if your system is not optimized? And then after it's optimized, then what? Then a series of conversations. I had just a bunch of wonderful conversations over the weekend. And you know why? Because it required people to be receptive. It required people to be reciprocative. It required people to have the courage to reciprocate vulnerability, mindfulness, meaningfulness. But a lot of times, somebody has to be the one to instigate it. Somebody has to be the one to have the courage to say, what matters to you right now? Somebody has the courage to say, talk about, well, man, I'm just trying this, I'm trying that, I'm failing at this, I'm failing at that. And then we can talk about our triumphs, we can talk about our failures, but it's all for the sake of edification. It's all for the sake of sophistication, evolution, becoming better human beings. It's all for the sake of what? Growth. Why is growth so important? Because if you ain't growing, you're dying, obviously. That's forgotten in our youth, because obviously in the midst of youth, you're continually intrinsic in that you are growing in an objective way. And then you're on this momentum, career, family, all this and that. And then you lose sight of your humanity. Your humanity is compromised, which is why after the dust settles, when people have their families, people have their careers, they don't know what the hell is going on. In an existential crisis, typically, I would argue, is very warranted. Because then you sort of lose yourself. You don't know who you are why you are the way you are, why you want what you want, why you don't want what you don't want. You got lost in the sauce. You got lost in the momentum that man encourages you to remain on. But that's why, again, the perfect, for me, the perfect reference is something like the spirit of Christianity, which, what is the emphasis in the spirit of Christianity? This emphasis, the spirit of Christianity is the soul. Do you believe we have a soul or not? That's the bottom line. Some people really need to come to grips with that. Do you believe the soul exists or not? Whether you believe the soul is this something that can be weighed, something that is intangible, something that goes up to heaven. But the point, the basic fundamental aspect of a soul, I would argue, is that it's something deeper than our flesh. It's something deeper than our base selves. But we're not interested in that something deeper because, again, we're not courageous enough to search for it, to fight for it, to cry for it, to die for it. In what way? In that way that you may have heard before, where people talk about ego death and all that. That's very real. We are walking insecurities. The ego is nothing but a glorified form of insecurity. And when we're not admitting our insecurities, when we're not proclaiming and declaring our insecurities and then trying to understand why we are, and then why we want to please people the way we want to please them, why we want to be appraised in a valuable way by the people we want. It's so you can have all the superficial connections, all the accolades, everybody telling you how great you are, but it means nothing because you know what? There's still an honest conversation that we're either allowing or preventing inside of ourselves. And when we keep pushing it down, 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 when we keep sweeping everything under the emotional rug, we only self-implode. Dysfunction is inevitable, and it manifests itself in all kinds of ways. You obliterate your system through addictions of all kinds that are destructive to your system. You obliterate yourself through all kind of toxic, passive, aggressive, unhealthy interactions with whether it's people you're close to or strangers or whomever. It's just a lack of healthiness that destabilizes. And then what does it compromise? It compromises your awareness. It compromises your truthful relationship with existence itself. There was some kind of study of some sort in the past where roughly, I'll just say, it was this survey where it asked people, if you had the opportunity to get into this vessel that mimicked the perfect reality where everything was just amazing for you, would you do it? It was basically like, would you choose to live in like a simulation? Like, people can have your arguments about whether or not existence is a simulation. Putting that aside, they asked people, would you consciously, purposely engage in a simulation if it was perfectly mimicking the reality we experience now? And then, like, let's say you were rich, you were a president, you were famous. Most people said they wouldn't do it. Why do most people not say that? Because most people don't want to live a lie. Most people don't want to live in BS. Most people don't want fakeness. Most people, because I would argue that it's just a basic raw appetite that we have. We want what's real. We want what's real, but we're not being real with each other. We are distracting ourselves constantly. We have bought into what just the majority and what the quote unquote popular those who are I don't consider I have to say those who are cool and popular and famous and whatnot, all these celebrities, they're not shit to me at all. If I saw a celebrity, I would not care. Just because people value you, that's not enough. What are you saying? What are you doing? How are you thinking? What are you promoting? What are you championing? What kind of mentality do you have? If you're just some superficial fool that's beautiful, who cares, man? If you see some superficial person that everybody, you ever see those things where somebody doesn't even know what somebody's famous for, but they still want a picture with them? Man, how sick is that? I'm not saying that I don't understand it, and I'm not saying that it's some kind of mortal sin and that like those people should be damned or something. But what I'm pointing out is recognize that we are, again, in the spirit of Christianity, the basic tenet. The basic tenet is we're flawed. We're intrinsically flawed. Yet nobody wants to approach existence like that. We want to believe that there's this notion that you're worthy. I get this, but you're worthy just because. I can't do that with me. And many people also can't do that. I can't tell myself I'm worthy just because. You know why? Because when I tell myself I'm worthy just because, I indulge all the worst parts of me. You know why? Because my worthiness and my value comes from effort. And when my efforts cease, when I cease to be a mindful person, when I cease to be an aware person, when I cease to be a healthy person, the worst of me comes out. And it's not because there's some demon inside me. It's not because I'm evil. It's because I'm a human being. And human beings have either there's a fork in the road. Either you make choices consciously, or you allow autopilot to dictate what you think, what you say, what you do. You have to make a decision. And that, yes, there are some people that are just very, very kind-hearted and perhaps don't need to try as hard in regards to trying to be a healthy human being. But I would argue, even those who are just so nice, even for those who are they're just nice, I've seen toxicity even from them. Many nice people are enablers. Many nice people don't have the courage to confront. And I consider myself a nice person. I'm extremely nice. I'm extremely sensitive. I'm extremely empathic. I have to override that to be confrontational, to ensure that health wins. And health is victorious. Me versus me, health is victorious. Me versus somebody else, health is victorious. Mindfulness is victorious. Vulnerability, transparency is victorious. Why? Because we don't want to live a BS life. We don't want to live an artificial life. We don't want artificial sincerity. Just having stuff is not enough. Why is everybody so empty? Having stuff is not enough. Just having people around is not enough. It's that old thing of like, you could be, it's nothing worse than feeling alone around a bunch of people. You need non-judgmental, aware, mindful people. We need a series of conversations, but we need courage more than anything. Courage to admit we can do better. Courage to admit that we are invested in nonsense. Courage to admit that we have unhealthy relationships with friends, family, loved ones, strangers. Courage to admit that we need to be more invested in effort. And that takes a lot of courage. That takes a lot of fight. But then what is the eventual outcome? The eventual outcome is that beautiful thing that is missing from so many slices of this American world. Community. You have a community. There's nothing better than being around people, man, that abide by everything that I'm saying, that aspire towards it. And there's no perfection in it, but it's just constant, perpetual effort. That's all. Bless y'all.